early results for us, so I'll bring those to you right now. They have completed counting for the mail-in ballots for the special Senate race. Of course, that's the Senate seat left vacant by Vinnie DiMacedo, who served Falmouth in the Massachusetts Senate for the last 4 years. He vacated the seat. So this special election is between Falmouth Selectman Sue Moran and Jay McMahon, an attorney from Bourne. And the early results from Falmouth are in. These are just early voting results. So the precincts, as they come in, will provide them to you as well. But this is all precincts in town, the early voting results. Sue Moran at 2,840 votes, and Jay McMahon 629 votes. There it is right there. Excuse me, 628. There it is on your screen. And we will, that's the total, that beautiful rainbow is cumulative votes in each precinct. And then the total votes you see there again, 2,840 for Moran and 628 for McMahon. We do have some results in this special Senate race that are filtering in from north of the bridge. And Jay McMahon did carry the town of Kingston. We know that those are unofficial results, but total for the town of Kingston, and did have a pretty strong showing thus far in Pembroke. So we have some folks who are providing results via text to our FCTV crack team here. So we will provide you results throughout the evening as we receive them. But Jay, so we have those early results. Sue Moran jumped out into a very, very strong early lead in Falmouth, which I think she needed to do, because really Falmouth is obviously her base as her hometown and a place where she served for a long time. She's lesser known over the bridge, and so she needed this strong showing to remain competitive in that race.
That's right. So with Kingston and Pembroke reporting in, we still have Bourne, Sandwich, Plymouth, and who else we have? I think that's it.
That's it. Yep. Falmouth, Bourne, Sandwich, Plymouth, Kingston, Pembroke is the district. And so, again, we'll continue to provide those results throughout this broadcast as we receive them. We will have both Senate candidates live here on this Zoom in just a few moments, as well as we do have a contested race on the ballot, Jay, locally for the Board of Selectmen. That seat vacated by Sue Moran, and the incumbent Sam Patterson is running for re-election, and there are two challengers, former Superintendent of Schools Nancy Taylor and Michael Halen. And so we'll have also all three of those candidates on so that you can see them and hear from them live on this Zoom meeting. And
let's also mention that Michael Halen is a town meeting member currently as well.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. And so our staff here at FCTV, we really appreciate, even though you don't see them on the screen right now, they are behind the scenes. Ryan will be putting up graphics as we discuss the different issues. And as we tabulate results, we'll be showing those to you graphically as well. So
is that your way? Is that your way of telling our audience that this is not a two-man show?
As always, Jay, it's the folks that are behind the cameras that do most of the work.
Falmouth Community Television, your community. That's right.
So Jay, as we look to the ballot tonight, and Ryan, if you could just throw up maybe some of the ballot questions, in addition to the contested selectmen's race, there are races for school committee and housing authority and planning board, but none of those are contested tonight. So the selectmen's race is the only at-large race that's contested, but there are in several precincts contested races for town meeting, which of course is Falmouth's legislative body.
And I believe we have not only the 2-year term or 3-year term, but there's also a couple of them there that are 2 or 1 year, I believe, Troy?
Yes, and so as you can see here, as we scroll through, you can see the graphic on your screen there. There is a contested race for the 3-year term in precinct 1, and what's up on the screen now, there's a 2-year term, which is an unexpired term. That's typically when someone either moves or resigns from their seat. So that unexpired term is being filled in. And then you can see in the rest of the precincts, there are races as well. Some of them are contested. And as we always do, we'll try to bring those results to you as well. So Mike Palmer is here again. Our town clerk is ready to provide us some additional results. Michael, welcome to this live election coverage. It's always great to see you, and thank you for your extremely hard work getting ready for this abnormal but important election.
Hi, Troy. How you doing? Hi, everybody else there. Yeah, this has been a very abnormal election. A lot of things went into putting this together, but we're getting there, and we're going to put this behind us hopefully tonight. We do have some early voting results, which we had a substantial turnout in early voting. I'm not sure. I know you don't want to read all the results, but are there particular races that you're concerned with in particular? I can read you those results.
Well, I think since the selectman's race is the contested race, I think we'd be interested in that, and perhaps the main ballot question that I think folks were energized about would be the override question.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the totals for this and not break it down by precinct because there is a lot of figures to be read. Again, this is just the early voting figures, and looks like we had 3473 voted in the Senate race, and 3,009 voted early in the town's election. So an unbelievable amount of early voters voted. But for the selectmen's race, these are just early voting. We're not talking totals yet. Michael Halen had 967. Sam Patterson had 2,058, and Nancy Robbins Taylor had 2,393.
Great, excellent.
And then we're going to go to the question. You said question one.
Yes, please.
Okay, so question one, and this the early voting surprised me. The yeses got 2,019, and the noes got 903. I thought that was going to go the other way, to be quite honest with you. But that question still has to, if when the precinct totals come in, still has to go before town meeting to appropriate the money. This just authorizes the override. But if this holds true, it looks like it's almost over 1,000 votes have passed by early voting. So that could be well on its way to passing when the rest of the votes come in.
Yeah, certainly with that margin, it appears that it would be, because certainly that sort of gap, I think, would be tough to overcome as the precinct results come in, wouldn't you think? Because you'd assume
I certainly would agree with you. Yes,
they would somewhat mirror the results. I mean, that's an interesting question, actually, both for you, Michael, and for Jay. I mean, I would expect that in all the races, that the precinct results would somewhat mirror the mail-ins, because or did you see, Michael, some precincts that had more mail-ins than others percentage-wise?
Yeah, as usual, precinct one had the most come in. They had almost 600 votes, and obviously precinct 7 had 172. So that seems to always happen, and they're an active community, and they're engaged, and they come out to vote. So, but in every precinct, this passed in every single precinct.
and so Michael, I'm curious, what has been the results today in terms of turnout? What are you seeing as you visit the various precincts?
Yeah, I think it was light very early, and then it was steady, but it was never overwhelming at any of the precincts. So,
so all of the plans that you put in place were working effectively.
Yeah, we're hoping they did. We're hoping we encourage early voting, and it's not perfect. It's labor intense, and mistakes get made, and some people didn't get a ballot if they sent it in too late, or you know, we processed again over 6,000 of the ballots we put out there. So it's a labor intense thing, and it's a challenge. And if we're moving forward to the November election, we definitely would have to have a different way to process this many early voting ballots by mail. I just don't. We're overwhelmed in the office in terms of manpower to be able to do this. So,
and your sense of the early voting?
Pardon?
Your sense of the early voting? Do you believe that we're going to see more of that in the November elections?
I think there's talk in Boston, and legislation is being looked at now and reviewed to expand early voting by mail, given the life we're living in right now. And I think you will see that. I think that's generally the consensus, that you'd like to have less people going out to the polls, even by September. We don't know where we'll be, but I think I think people are looking at that to have more early voting by mail. But again, what form that's going to take, it needs to be maybe a more automated system. I'm not sure. Once I get by through this election, I'd like to analyze what we did here. And again, there's only a few towns had elections today. Where in September, November, everyone's going to have them. And to get 352 town clerks putting in the amount of time that my office staff did here, it's a little overwhelming. So I'm going to be looking at what possible fixes.
So Troy, there's an opportunity for another discussion at another time, just the very subject of mail-in voting and how that's evolving. Of course, we have a particular situation that's brought this one about, but as a general topic going forward in the election process, mail-in voting is one of those topics.
No question. And Jay, actually, that's prescient of you to suggest that, because actually you'll see in a few minutes a video that Michael and I had the opportunity to shoot on Sunday or yesterday. Sometime in the last couple of days, we had the chance to chat. And one of the issues we discussed is how this election is very different from others, but how the huge numbers of people who voted early by mail really maybe sets the stage for more of that in the future. Because when you look at the numbers, just the raw numbers, roughly 20,000 voters here in town, and if so, you had 3,000 people vote, 6,000 ballots, so say 3,000 or so people voted by mail. That's a percentage that rivals some local elections for the whole turnout. So it's very, very encouraging. I think we're seeing, interestingly enough, some of the geographical splits, Jay, that you and I have talked about in the show on election coverage for years. And every year we talk about how people in other parts of town can get motivated to vote, but every year the results seem to be consistent, that certain parts of town in Woods Hole and Chippewa and West and North Falmouth seem to vote at higher percentages than other parts of town, and the results often hinge on that turnout. What do you think about that trend, Michael?
Hey, I'm gonna back out here for a second, and I'll be back when I have some more results. We have everything starting to come in here pretty quickly here, so I'll get back on when I have the results from the precinct.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Take care.
He and his staff has been doing a wonderful job this voting season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. So when we had the chance to chat yesterday, we talked about the fact that the preparations that his staff has had to go through, not only to prepare the actual polling places in different ways to assure social distancing, but to process that incredible number of ballots that were mailed in. And they had staffing challenges as well, because understandably, many of the folks who typically work at the polls on election day belong to some of the highest percentages of people that are susceptible to the pandemic. And so that's been a challenge. And so, and I'm not just saying this because he's my friend, Michael has been working 7 days a week, 12-hour days for the last couple of months, getting ready for this election. So we really do owe them a debt of gratitude for, keeping democracy orderly here in Falmouth.
And having a precinct warden living in my home, I've watched them in action.
Right.
Everybody's been very dedicated.
Let's talk about those early results. We will have one of the Senate candidates coming on in just a few minutes. In fact, I have a note from FCTV CEO Deb Rogers that one of the Senate candidates is here in the waiting room. So let's invite Sue Moran onto the show to talk about today's Senate race.
Wonderful.
So welcome.
Welcome, Sue.
So give us your thoughts, early results, at least the early voting numbers in Falmouth look very promising for you, Sue. So 2840 to 628, that's really positive. We have been able to provide our viewers with some results.
It appears that Sue can't hear us.
Sue, can you hear us?
So we have perhaps on her side some one key away.
Some technical difficulties there, yes.
Well, it gives us an opportunity to have a good look at her.
Well, while we're working out those technical difficulties, so Jay, these early results looks like Nancy Taylor, the former superintendent of schools,
Correct.
has managed to jump out to a pretty significant early lead with the incumbent Sam Patterson, some 300 votes behind, and then one of the challengers, Michael Halen, at a pretty significant clip behind both of them. And so there you go. Again, we are so grateful to Ryan Weber and the other staff here at FCTV that provide these graphic results to us in real time as we're discussing them. So again, for those that are watching, this is only, those results that we just saw are only the early voting results, but it will be interesting, Jay, to see, as I mentioned a minute ago, how the total results mirror the early voting. I'm going to guess that they'll be fairly similar because the early voting occurred town-wide.
Right.
And so particularly for question one, and for those that may be just tuning in, early voting results on question one, that's the override to add approximately $900,000 to add firefighters to our fire department. That is out to a commanding lead.
It is indeed. I think that's an excellent barometer.
903.
I think that's an excellent barometer of what we can expect. I would join you in speculating that it's going to favor Article 1 as well as Ms. Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm getting results here in real time from some friends north of the bridge. And so for those following those races, it looks like Jay McMahon has won Pembroke and Kingston, and they're still counting the numbers in Plymouth. I just got a note from the former senator himself, and he's following the election results as well. So former Senator DiMacedo says hello to his former constituents here in Falmouth, and we are very grateful for his years of service for sure.
Absolutely. The halls of higher education are going to thrive with him present.
Yes, yes, indeed. So while we wait to try to see if we can get Sue back on here, and we will have Jay McMahon joining us in just a couple of minutes, and so we can talk about that Senate race. Jay, let's go back and talk again about those local results. So what do you think about what we're seeing in terms of those early numbers and the selectmen's race?
Well, you know, Sam Patterson is a known quantity. He's been a very measured and temperate voice on the Board of Selectmen. I know from personal experience that he's out and about and he's a great listener, and he's measured. So, and I think Ms. Taylor acquainted herself in the same fashion during the debates that occurred just prior to this election. And so I think they're going to do well. My own prognostication is that Patterson will prevail again and will serve another term, and Ms. Taylor will be joining him. Again, you know, it doesn't hurt that we already have those preliminary results from the mail-in, but having received those, I think that it bodes well for the community. And it would have also, that's not to diminish Mr. Halen in any form or fashion. He's a worthy competitor, town meeting member, vocal, and has a fair following.
No question. And in fact, I would say Mike Halen deserves a lot of credit because he has run for a couple of different offices and continues to put himself out there. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to put yourself out there on the ballot for any race. And the fact that he stays involved and active in the community is the kind of activism and commitment to this local democracy that we need to see. It does appear, however, that the results tonight for the selectmen's race, with those early voting results in, it would be extremely difficult to overcome a more than 1,000 vote deficit through the early voting results. And so to make up 1,000 votes, when we suspect that the results will be mirrored, I think would be very difficult.
I see that we have Sue back. Sue, can you hear us now? Apparently not. Oh my goodness. Well,
Well,
she looks great. Going back to our conversation until that's taken care of, one of the things that I've often noticed, Troy, when we've brought these results to the public, is that generally at the very onset, you've been very quick to thank all of the competitors for competing and participate. There she is, and participating in the public arena. Okay, Sue, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
all right, well,
Welcome.
welcome.
Thank
Welcome
you
to
for
our
your
show.
patience.
So,
Hello.
hi.
Hi, nice to see you.
So Troy had an opening question for you. Troy, I'll leave it with you.
Sure.
So welcome, and we're very glad you're joining us on this very exciting night. I know both you and your opponent, Jay McMahon, who we'll have on in a few minutes, have worked very hard, tirelessly, and you'll be right back at it, whatever the results are tonight. So we'd just like to chat with you briefly. The early results here in Falmouth are very encouraging for you. With the early voting numbers in, you have a pretty commanding 2,200 vote lead against Jay McMahon. It does appear we have some folks reporting to us north of the bridge that the towns of Kingston and Pembroke have gone in favor of Jay McMahon. So it's a fairly tight race.
Mhm.
And as some pundits predicted, including this one, I think the results will depend on the margin of victory here in Falmouth, which is your base. So how do you feel? How's it going? And share with us the big sigh of relief you must be taking after campaigning for several weeks in a very unique way.
Oh, thank you, Troy. Thank you, Jay. And thanks to FCTV and this incredible production. It's so hard in the time of COVID to really continue to get the word out. And you've done a stellar job of including the community. You know, I would say the biggest thing I feel is just gratitude. You know, we've been able to, you know, really garner an incredible professional team. Just an amazing amount of endorsements. Just the advice and the commitment of Democrats in this community, in the tradition of former Senate President Terry Murray, all the way to current Senate President Karen Spilka. And I remain optimistic about this community, about this district, in the sense that I know that with our ingenuity and our ability to bring people together, we will just make sure that folks are safe, make sure that we have testing, make sure that we protect all of our family and our neighbors from any continuing waves. And at the same time, really dig out of the economic hole that this crisis has put us under. And I remain optimistic in terms of the election right now. I think that, you know, the future in terms of economic development is a linchpin that folks really need. So I'm hoping to be able to, you know, to lend that to the community. And regardless, I will continue to do that, as I have in the past year, serving in, you know, on just regionally as well as locally.
So speaking of locally, Sue, you know, local politics, retail politics is so dependent on contact with voters, and, you know, and our collective histories as community leaders, everyone on this screen, you know, our sort of bread and butter is meeting people face to face and handshaking and that human contact. So talk to us a little bit about how this campaign has been different, because from very early on, really you were prohibited from doing that. So you had to reinvent what campaigning meant.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think from the from the superintendents I've met with, to the teachers, to, you know, the municipal leaders, we've all had to adjust and get used to technology. For example, the Zoom technology that we're using right here. So that's been one tool. But the most important thing has been, you know, the conversations that I've had and that my team has had with individuals who are, you know, who have important questions, who want to know where resources are, who want to know what services still are available. And those are the things that we have just really focused on in terms of outreach to constituents and folks who, you know, whether it's, you know, if you need a connection to a service, I'm a local selectman, I can forward that as well. So we've just been focused on constituent services while we are running to try to help the district in a different way coming from the State House level.
So Sue, tell us a little bit about your experience competing on a regional basis. We know, of course, you're homegrown right here in Falmouth, but you've also been on the Assembly of Delegates for the county as well. So getting out into the community and to the other side of the bridge, how was that for you?
You know, my regional experience certainly gave me access to more legislative colleagues in terms of the larger size of the projects, whether it's water quality or, you know, bridge, you know, fix, many different, you know, climate change, the beach erosion, all the things that the entire district depends upon being tourism-based economy. And, you know, these are things that are common to the entire district and that I will continue to work on. I can't tell you the amount of humbleness and gratitude I have for all the endorsements. I can't, you know, I've had sitting legislators who are Republicans call me and say, you know, I voted for you for your experience and the fact that we really need someone to hit the ground running right now. So, you know, I'm very proud of the way that we've run this campaign, and I'm just really looking forward to what comes next. And either way, I will continue to serve the community.
Excellent. Roy?
Well, thank you for that. So as we look at these numbers, and I'm going back and forth and looking at the numbers both north of the bridge and here, and we offer commentary on this show, which is good, right? So we get to speculate, and it looks to me, although your opponent Sue was performing strong north of the bridge, as I said, in Kingston and Pembroke, the margins in each precinct are fairly small. It's a very, very tight race, whereas your margin of victory, just with the early voting results here in Falmouth, is over 2,200, and we expect that to mirror itself when we count the precinct results. It would appear as though that's going to be difficult to overcome. Of course, Bourne is not in yet, and that's Mr. McMahon's hometown, and Plymouth is the largest town in the district. But these early numbers do look pretty positive.
And of course, we still have Sandwich to get theirs as well. Or have you already?
I don't have specific numbers for Sandwich, but I do have from a reliable source that Sue Moran has won the town of Sandwich.
Oh.
Wow. That's incredible news. Well, you know, all I want to say to that is for everyone that voted for our campaign, I'm incredibly grateful, and I'm still hopeful that we will win the election, and I can just promise that no one will work harder. And you know, just to have this interview in my hometown of Falmouth, warms my heart. So it's a great place. Thank you very much, both of you.
Glad we could do
We're
this.
very grateful that on this busiest of nights, you know, again, all of us on the screen here have taken part in some way or another in many local campaigns as workers or candidates ourselves or as supporters. And, you know, one of the biggest, most fun parts of that long trudge is the election night party, when you all get together and there's this electricity in the room, and it either explodes or diminishes depending on the results. But how, Sue, it must be very different to be, I mean, I'm sure you're thrilled to be here with me and Jay on
Well,
a
it's
Zoom.
kind of happening right now, as you've suggested, and you know, I can feel the electricity always when I'm at FCTV. But I just came off a Zoom call with, you know, incredible supporters. Nancy Taylor, for example, we're on the edge of our seat, looking forward to the results of her race. And, you know, it's really, you know, it's like minds in terms of folks who really are energized by doing good things for the community. And that's what is the most important thing right now during this COVID challenge.
Indeed, indeed. So I am getting some results, and we don't want to preempt our town clerk, Michael Palmer, but I do have some folks feeding us some results here, and it looks like I'm going to just compare. Let's see, yeah, so there are some other Falmouth numbers trickling in, and the trend does continue pretty positive. And so without Sandwich reporting, Sue has, looks like about a 2,000 vote lead without Sandwich reporting, and we know she was successful there. It looks like early results in Bourne are almost a deadlock, 1407 Moran, 1476 McMahon. And so the results continue to trend in a very positive way for you, Sue. So let's assume the trend continues and you're elected senator tonight. What does tomorrow look like for you?
You know, if that is the result of the vote, the first thing I'm going to do is probably jump up, you know, and hit my head on the ceiling just after the most incredible run, and my whole team putting an incredible effort in, and there otherwise is not a minute to spare. This community needs immediate leadership. This community needs someone to hit the ground running in terms of the legislative delegation. Those folks I've worked with for years, they've always been, you know, generous in really working together. And I'm looking forward to more of that. And our current legislators have been working incredibly hard with incredible long hours, led by the Senate president, to do the best thing, both health-wise and economically, for this community. And I'm, you know, I'll be blessed if that happens, to be able to put a really strong oar in the water toward that effort.
And of course, if I'm not mistaken, you have to start looking towards November again.
Absolutely. We you know what, we can do two things at once. So, you know, we and so can all the supporters. So I'm thrilled to say the papers are in. We're ready for anything that comes. And you know, I've always really appreciated, you know, a long, hard day's work, and those are the folks I like to surround myself with. And I think we will be a formidable, productive force in the legislature until that point, and we will also be formidable in any election that comes.
I'll savor that glass of wine later this evening.
Absolutely. Nice to see you, Jay.
Well, Sue, I know you have other things to tend to and other folks to chat with, so we really appreciate you spending some time with us. No, regardless of the results tonight, you and all of the candidates deserve a tremendous amount of credit for putting yourself out there, for caring deeply about this community, and for serving it with honor and distinction. So thank you, and we wish you the best.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Thanks for what you both do to keep this community informed.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye now.
All right, so that was Falmouth Select Board member and candidate for the Massachusetts State Senate, Sue Moran. It's called the Plymouth and Barnstable seat, formerly held by Vinnie DiMacedo, and for many years before that by the Honorable Therese Murray. So it's really, Jay, Sue and Jay McMahon both are vying to step into the shoes of a couple of previous incumbents that are really held in high regard. And one of the interesting things about the history of that seat is, of course, the former Senate President Therese Murray is a Democrat, Vinnie DiMacedo was a Republican, but they both were able to serve that district as a true representative of the people, because they were both clearly, they had a party affiliation, but their true affiliation was to the constituents of the district. And that's really become a hallmark of the people that hold that seat.
It absolutely has. You're quite right. You know, and being a Falmouth resident over 20 years now, I had the privilege of meeting Senator Murray, and as you said, both she and Vinnie had distinguished themselves as being able to cross that divide and work collaboratively with the other side very well.
And that's really important, because the district itself, again, it's Falmouth, Bourne, Sandwich, Plymouth, Kingston, and Pembroke, the entirety of all those towns. And that is a pretty politically diverse district, even
Yes,
on the
indeed.
Cape side. That, you know, the towns of Sandwich and Bourne really have a makeup politically that's very different from Falmouth. And so you really, in order to serve in that district, have to be able to cross across the aisle and to work with people, and that's just been critical in getting things done.
So Troy, I'm not very familiar with Kingston or Pembroke in terms of their demographics. What do we have in terms of town size? Do you know?
In terms of the size of the towns?
Yeah, voting size.
I don't know voting, but I just off the top of my head, because of course I've worked in the area for most of my career. I worked for the town of Bourne for many years. I worked as the county administrator for Plymouth County back a dozen or so years ago. And so when you go up the line, the population, and this is just off the top of my head, so those viewing, you can Google it and correct me. I'd welcome that correction. But just off the top of my head, Bourne around 19 or 20,000 population. Sandwich, I think a little more. Plymouth's around between 50 and 60,000 these days. Pembroke is around 20-ish, 20 to 25,000 in population. And Kingston a little less, maybe around 15. So there's, as we've talked about, Jay, over the years on this show in Falmouth, those towns have an economic diversity. Plymouth certainly more like Falmouth with a cultural and an economic diversity. Kingston and Pembroke a little less so. You know, as you get further north in that district, the politics tend to lean a little right of center, where they also do in Sandwich, Bourne, more of a mixed bag, and of course Falmouth, generally centrist, but sometimes as a whole leaning to the left a little bit. So you really have a rich political diversity in the district, and that's why it's so important to have someone, I think, that can serve really all the constituency. And you know, I think we just heard that commitment out of Sue Moran, and hopefully Jay McMahon will join us shortly, and we'll be able to hear something from him as well.
What do we have next on our lineup, Troy? Take a look at mine, at my calendar.
Well, so we will in a few minutes have some of the selectmen. We'll have some of the selectmen's candidates on. Let's see. I'm just going to check our schedule here. Yeah, we will start bringing in some of the selectmen's candidates in just a few minutes. But what we can do is really talk about some of those results as we've seen thus far. So we continue to get some results coming in on the Senate race, and it does look as though I'm just going to read you a text that I got from somebody from the South Shore. McMahon won Pembroke, Bourne, Kingston by a total of 500 votes. And so it really does appear that 2,200 vote margin for Sue Moran here in Falmouth is almost insurmountable.
Well, you're turning out to be the pundit extraordinaire.
Well, you know what? It's as you mentioned at the top of the show, Jay. We've been doing this for many years, and so
Right.
it's great to have contacts in other communities that are as excited about the local democratic process as we are, and that are willing to share some of the information. So,
in the backdrop of my home, I can hear my precinct warden has just arrived. So I know that precinct 6 is now closed.
excellent. Well, so that should portend well then for getting some other townwide results. And we will have the selectmen's candidates on in a few. We also, why don't we do this? We are waiting for Senate candidate Jay McMahon to come on.
Right.
But while we're waiting for him, why don't we roll the interview with Michael Palmer? We were able to speak to him for a few minutes yesterday and really get some insight in terms of what it takes to put together a local election in a time of a pandemic. And we've
Excellent.
mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Jay, but the attention to detail that it's taken has really required a Herculean effort, and Michael and all of his staff deserve a tremendous amount of credit.
They do indeed.
So the folks back at the studio, if you don't mind rolling that video, let's hear from our town clerk, Michael Palmer. I'm here with town clerk Michael Palmer, and we're very grateful that he's taken some time out of the busy preparations for this election to chat with us. So Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Troy. Good to be able to give you some information ahead of time.
And that's really what we're trying to do. So I know this pandemic has really fundamentally changed the way you look at, set up for, and account for elections. So why don't you just tell us briefly about what you've been up to for the last several weeks? I know you've put in many long hours, working 7 days a week to get the community ready for this important election.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Just have to recognize the staff in the town clerk's office. They've really stepped up and done a tremendous job. We're putting in a lot of hours, and it's really labor intense, the process of early voting by mail. Also a shout out to the recreation staff. Joe Olenek over there at the rec building has helped us with the mailing, stuffing some of the envelopes and stuff. And we've also had a handful of election workers or concerned citizens that have come in every day, maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, and process the mail and stuff the envelopes. Again, I get back to it's an extremely labor intense process of early voting by mail. And anytime you bring humans into a situation, you're bound to have human error, and that's the problem. Somebody walks into a polling place and, hi, I'm Michael Palmer, I'm here to vote. You vote, you put your ballot in the voting machine. Well, with early voting, you accept an application, you're entering the information into a terminal, you're stuffing an envelope, you're putting labels on the outside, you're mailing it out, and then you got to receive it back and do all the process. So anytime you bring more human element into it, the ability for a human error to come into play dramatically does. And we're doing our best to eliminate any of those possible places. And we have to really have people understand that we're just trying to facilitate people to be able to vote. If they happen to have gotten the wrong inner envelope and the outer envelope, we have a means to correct that, but they got to bear with us. The volume that we had, we're processed over 9,000 applications for early voting by mail. So that's about 4,500 for each of the 2 elections. Now we're receiving them back now, and we have to process them and record them, and then on election day we have to open those envelopes up and process them through the tabulator. So it's been a daunting task for sure.
So those are pretty impressive numbers, Michael. So 4,500 votes. I mean, that would be in some cases low, but not an atypical turnout for an entire local election. So do you anticipate that you'll see those numbers even when we return to some sense of normalcy, whatever that is, that the early voting and the voting by mail will continue to show significant numbers like that?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts on that. Is that so many people have voted early that, you know, a turnout in a local election is probably a 30% turnout. Well, if we have 4,000 people already voted and say 8,000 people vote normally, that's 50% of the people that normally go to the polls on a local election have
Right.
already voted. On election day, the turnout should be significantly decreased. Moving forward, how we, and there's some legislation in play now of expanding early voting by mail for the next primary in September and the November presidential primary. I have some real concerns, and I hope that they'll reach out to the town clerks that are doing this right now and get our input, because I really believe unless we fundamentally change how these things are going to be processed by town clerk's office, we will have a failure like the Gore-Bush campaign election in Florida. It really is overwhelming, and you increase that from a 30% turnout to an 80% turnout, and the staffs of the town clerk's office they just will not be able to handle it. I'm really concerned that legislators pass a law and just say, well, the town clerks will do it. I would literally have to form another department in the town of Falmouth called the Elections Division in order to make this work. So there has to be some changes made to how we process these early voting by mail, if that's how we're going to be heading. And it's convenient for people, granted, but it's not convenient for us. Again, before early voting, we'd set up the polls. It was one day. People would come and people go. Now we're doing this we're running an election for a month at a time. It's just overwhelming, the process. So that being said, there has to be some changes made to how we're processing these early voting by mail ballots. Either you have to have mail merges set up so the envelopes are printed with addresses already on them, rather than printing labels and putting the labels on the envelope and stuffing the envelope. High-speed tabulators would help instead of processing one ballot at a time. If we had high-speed tabulators, that would help. But it really has to be studied and just not thrown out there and say the town clerks will do it, because it will not work. I mean, we will be on the news like you hear from other states, which I've always been able to defend our system of voting in Massachusetts, and I always felt that we were doing the best job that we could. Expanding this will get that out of my being able to control every aspect of it, and I won't have the confidence in what we're doing because of the human element involved with that. So they really have to think out how town clerks and how these are going to be processed if we're going to expand the use of early voting by mail.
So lots of progress you've made, but it sounds like in order to make this a smooth transition to more mail-in voting, a lot of work left to do. What changes have you made to the physical polling locations to accommodate the social distancing and other protective measures?
Yeah, a couple of things we have in place for this election. We're only going to allow 6 people into a polling place at any one time. We're going to have a door monitor to, if there is a line, we've had so many people vote for it early, this may not even be an issue, but we're going to have a person at the door. When there's 6 people in there, when one person comes out, we'll let the next person in. We want to have people, if they don't bring their own mask, we will provide them a mask. Inside the precincts, we have sneeze guards in front of each position where each election worker will be standing. We also have masks and gloves and sanitizer available inside the polling places. I've also contracted an outside cleaning company to be there at each polling location for the entire day to sanitize the voting booths and the marking pens after every voter, door knobs, voting machine, that type of thing. So that's in place, and hopefully that'll to work to reduce any potential exposure from election workers and voters.
So that explains literally why you've been working 7 days a week and very long days for the last several weeks, is really to make all those preparations so that people can safely exercise their right to vote.
Absolutely. It's been a daunting task. We have 9 voting places, and you have 6 to 8 people working the polls at each location. That's, we're upwards of 100 people, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle trying to put it together. You know, there's going to be a lot of new people. We've decided to do some interviewing because, you know, I put out a message 3 weeks ago, you know, can you work or can't you work? And I wasn't judging, and I wasn't saying it's all personal preference. But we got a commitment from some people we hired to fill in hot spots, and then circumstances change for people. And or as early this morning, there are people saying, calling up, and they can't. So hopefully we'll be able to cover that. If not, we will be thin. So that being said, with the 6 people being allowed in one time, it won't be overwhelming for the election workers if we are a little bit thin at the polling places.
Right. Well, Town Clerk Michael Palmer, thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do to make sure that the election process is smooth here in the town of Falmouth. You've been at it for many, many years, and we're grateful that you are there during this difficult time.
Thanks, Troy. You know, I'm looking forward to election day. That's always been a fun part of my job, and getting results and seeing people win or lose is always something I've enjoyed, and what actually got me into this job of town clerk is being there for those moments. So, but this one in particular, I'm really excited about putting it behind us, because it has been a daunting task to administer this election. So I'm confident in what we've done here in Falmouth. And again, we've got Mike staff and the citizens of the town and the rec building have really stepped up and helped. I'm confident that we'll pull this off with no significant issues. So.
Excellent. Well, we're confident, and you as well, based on your experience and the fact that you've done this very well for a long time. So again, thank you, and stay safe. We'll see you soon.
All right, Troy. Thanks a lot. Talk.
All right. So that was
an excellent interview.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty
that was really excellent. You know, you could hear that Michael needs to catch his breath.
Indeed.
It has been a long process.
It has, but he won't quite catch it yet, because folks watching here on FCTV Live, if you haven't had enough of Town Clerk Michael Palmer for one day, we are very pleased to right now bring him back live.
Bring him back.
Looks like he is still live there at Town Hall, and we're grateful to looks like we're going to be able to bring you some more results live right now. Michael, we just had you on for a wonderful 10-minute interview, and as I said, if the folks in Falmouth haven't had enough of you yet, we're going to give you them some more. So what do you got for us?
So we do have some unofficial results from town-wide, and it looks like Sue Moran took Falmouth to almost 2-1, 44-36 to 21-61. Be interested to see how she did in some of the other towns, particularly Plymouth, to be honest with you. I don't know if you have any of those results yet.
We do. So Jay McMahon did carry the towns of Kingston and Bourne and Pembroke, but by very small margins. And so that some almost 2,300 vote margin here in Falmouth, I think will be extremely difficult for him to overcome. She did win the town of Sandwich. We're awaiting Plymouth.
Okay, Plymouth could be a while. They weren't they were having some challenges there, so we'll see how long that takes, but that's okay. So I do have also for the Board of Selectmen, it looks like Sam Patterson will go back in as a selectman, and Nancy Taylor was also elected. She had 4,117 votes, and Sam Patterson at 3,484, with Mike Halen 2,393.
All right, so let me just get, so 4,484 for Patterson, 4,117 for Taylor, and 2,393 for Halen.
3,484 for Patterson.
3,484. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And question one, any final results on that?
Yeah, I do have it, and that did also pass almost 3-1 or 2-1, however you put it. 3592 yes, 2172 no. So that authorizes the 2.5 override. Town meeting will still have to deal with the appropriating the funds for that. So it still gets another bite of the apple from town meeting. People were concerned about that, but they will still have the ability to discuss that at town meeting and see where we go from that. But that was a pretty large margin of victory there also, quite honestly.
It was, and that'll be very interesting to see what town meeting does with that, because of course, it's not required by law, but typically the process is reversed, where a town meeting will discuss and vote something like that, and then it will go to the ballot. But the town meeting does preserve its legislative authority, Jay and Michael, on this. And despite the will of the voters to pass it, the elected town meeting members, really the final decision now rests with them.
I think the timing of the election and the postponement of the town meeting
Right.
really called for the selectmen to, if they wanted it on this year's annual town election, they had a vote to place it on the ballot prior to us having a town meeting, which has been postponed. If we had had town meeting as really scheduled, then that would have been in place. But given the postponement of town meeting, that's what put us in this predicament.
Right.
Indeed. So, all right. Well, Michael, we thank you very much. I'm sure you've got more stuff to do there at Town Hall. The folks here did see the interview that we had yesterday, and we sincerely thank you for the incredible hard work, you and your staff, of what they've done to really pull off an election under extremely challenging circumstances. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Jay. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Take care, Michael.
Take care.
So that was
That was
our
very
town
interesting.
clerk, Michael Palmer, who once again was at the forefront of another successful local election here in Falmouth. And I've said this on the show before, but Michael is not only our town clerk, I'm proud to call him a friend. And he actually taught me a lot about politics and local elections. And he has been just someone who has really dedicated the last decades of his life to making sure that elections are run well in the interest of the people here in Falmouth.
And imagine my surprise when a Christmas parade rolled around and I found Michael hiding behind clown paint.
Yes, indeed. Well, he also gives back a lot to the
He
community.
does, doesn't he? Absolutely.
Despite his busy schedule, able to do things to build a better Falmouth. So it's we're very fortunate to have someone like him. And so Jay, those results, we will have the selectmen candidates on in just a few minutes, and we'll be able to interview now Sam Patterson, who was re-elected as a member of the Board of Selectmen, former Superintendent of Schools Nancy Taylor, who actually pulled the highest vote by a fairly comfortable more than 600 vote margin, and the challenger Michael Halen, again, who put his name out there and worked hard, but did come up short by about 1,000 votes. And so it'll be interesting to see as we unwrap these results in their totality, how that geographic dynamic fits in here. We've analyzed that again year in and year out, but Sam Patterson has served honorably now for a few terms, and so not a big surprise that he was reelected. And Nancy Taylor, I think, with that name recognition and the fact that she's been here her whole life and served honorably for more than 30 years for the school department, finishing out as the superintendent with a pretty solid reputation.
Absolutely.
Not a big surprise there.
No, not really. So as is your fashion, and you do this so well, thanking Mr. Halen for competing, and as he continues to participate in town affairs as a town meeting member, I certainly want to wish him well and encourage him to step up again.
Without a doubt. Democracy dies when we don't have dissent. And so I think it's important for people who are passionate about their government to step up and continue to give back. We should give a nod. I would say Mark Finneran was not on the ballot. This is the first time in some, I think, 7 or 8 years he wasn't on the ballot for the Board of Selectmen, because he's dealing and caring for his mother, who is struggling with some serious health issues. But we're fortunate in this town that when those important offices are up every year, people step up to the plate and they stand up. And as someone who was a candidate for selectmen 6 times, I lost twice and won 4. So I know what it feels like to put yourself out there and to lose. And it's not a good feeling. But you know, I think the admiration that people have for people that are willing to take up that challenge, and that goes for all three of them, for
Absolutely.
Nancy, for Sam,
Absolutely.
and for Mike, to be willing to stand up and be counted is something that a lot of people aren't willing to do. So congratulations, certainly, to Sam Patterson and to Nancy Taylor for your victories, and to Mike Halen for being willing to be out there. So we will have the opportunity to chat with each of them in just a few minutes. But you know, I think Michael Palmer, the results on question 1 were a bit of a surprise to him. He thought that override question was looking as though it may go down to defeat, but it was a pretty resounding victory for that, Jay. And that, of course, was approximately $900,000 override, which means a permanent increase in the tax levy, the amount that we can tax the residents here in Falmouth, by about $900,000 for purposes of the fire department, specifically to staff the West Falmouth station. And while we're giving credit to candidates, there was a group of citizens in West Falmouth who were concerned about the staffing levels at that station. And they really showed how local government and local democracy works.
They did, didn't they? That's right.
They organized, they got their message out, they did it the right way. They went to the decision makers, they asked for their help. And I'll tell you, we can talk for the rest of the week about the, you know, the gridlock in Washington. But here, democracy works because people like those folks in West Falmouth stood up and wanted to be heard, and they did it the right way. And now that they're smelling victory, and they really deserve a lot of credit, because, and that should serve as a lesson to folks throughout the community that have an interest. You know, you can make a difference, because these people did, and those overwhelming results show that.
Well, it doesn't hurt that we've been seeing first responders lauded across the nation, and recognizing their importance to the safety of the community. So I'm sure there was on some level, an appreciation and recognition of what they do and how important it is to have a well-staffed department.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And so, again, those folks deserve a lot of credit. We were scheduled to have Mike Halen on here at 9:35, which is just about now. Unfortunately, we're just getting a note that he's not able to join us. So we will have Nancy Taylor and Sam Patterson in just a few minutes. But while we wait for them, let's continue to talk about that override question. So,
Sure.
you know, that's not something that you see on the ballot a lot. It's a permanent tax increase, but I think people felt as though that station in West Falmouth, it's highly working in the business. I can tell you it's highly uncommon to have a fire engine staffed with one person, or a station staffed with one person. And so I know the town had been working on some solutions, but again, this was one where the citizens really took the reins and guided their government in the right direction. And so it was very refreshing to see that. I would give a list of those West Falmouth Village folks who led the effort, but I don't want to leave anyone off. So I would just say it was a really well-organized, concerted effort with retired firefighters and just citizens at large. And it was really great to see.
Well, you know, Troy, I read your column every week, and here's another example of a topic area where process is really the theme. And using West Falmouth residents as an example of that, I think there's another column there waiting for you.
Yes, I think you're right. It's great when democracy works. And speaking of democracy working, I am very pleased now to welcome our newest member of the Select Board, Nancy Taylor, onto the show here tonight. She's here in the waiting room, and so we're very pleased to have her. And we'll talk to her about her very strong, resounding victory here tonight in the local election. Nancy, can you hear us?
I can.
All right. Well,
Hi, Nancy. This is Jay.
Let
Hi,
Jay
Jay.
and I be the first to offer you very warm congratulations on an extremely successful bid, your first bid for elected office, and I believe, and the numbers showed that your hometown really rallied around you and showed some very strong support. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
So, we talked to, we had the Senate candidate Sue Moran on just a few minutes ago, and it does look as though as the Plymouth results are coming in, they look to be trending pretty strong for Sue, and so she looks to be coasting to a victory tonight as well. One of the things we talked to her about is what it was like to campaign in the time of a pandemic, where as we chatted about with Sue, local politics is retail politics, and right, your bread and butter is getting out there and meeting voters and being able to connect with them. But you had the challenge of having to do that without being able to really physically be in touch. But I know you very effectively used social media during this campaign. I kept track of that, and I'm going to suggest that was an important part of your victory, your ability to get your message out, because you were already very well known in the community, but you still have to connect with the voters. And do you think you were able to successfully do that?
Well, I tried as much as I could. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I tried as much as I could given the circumstances. But yes, social media played a very important role in this campaign. And I had some wonderful people working with me on social media. Sarah Murphy was just a gem in helping me accomplish that. Today, I went out to T-Ticket and just had a blast waving at cars, and people were very, very receptive and kind. So it's been challenging. And like you said, Troy, I have never done this before. So this was kind of an interesting time to jump into it. But, and I had two very worthy opponents. So I was very humbled at the numbers and very, very pleased and very, very grateful.
Well, that's great to hear. You certainly earned it, Nancy. And again, we offer you warm congratulations. So you served the town with honor and distinction for many, many years in the school department. And you were able to retire and begin to enjoy the next phase of your life, but decided that would include giving back in a very demanding position on the select board. And so there are more than 4,000 very grateful people who voted for you today that agree that was a good choice. But tell us what motivated you to continue to give back.
Well, as you know, I've been in Falmouth for forever, and I'm very, very committed to Falmouth families. I certainly demonstrated that throughout my professional career and made sure that I stayed in Falmouth for the entirety of my career. So that was one part of it. The second part that motivated me was we are going through a very, very difficult time right now, and this time is impacting everyone in so many different ways. And I think about families, I think about students, I think about what's going on in our community. And I really wanted to be part of the challenge of bringing Falmouth out of this pandemic. That's really important to me. And so that's kind of what spurred me on. The other piece was that I worked for Susan Moran's campaign from the very beginning. And I just think Susan's amazing, and she'll do an amazing job on Beacon Hill. But as we were working with different people in Falmouth, it was suggested to me that I should run. And I thought, wow, you know, that is a way I could really serve Falmouth in a way that I could be part of a team that helps bring us out of this pandemic and helps move Falmouth forward.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Nancy, when you first announced that you were running, it's really the first time I took a really hard look at you as a candidate. And what I found over and over again is this very thoughtful approach where you're not hesitant, but you're mindful of all of the variables before you respond. You think before you speak. So sometimes uncommon in our political arena, But I was drawn to your candidacy from the onset. I thought, this is great, particularly as Troy was mentioning, you had retired, and the choices there are quite stark. One is do nothing and enjoy retirement, and the other is roll up your sleeves and jump into the thick of it. And thank you for that, making that choice.
Thank you very much, Jay. I really do look forward to serving our community in a different capacity, but certainly in a capacity that has as many difficult challenges, especially at this time. So I'm very excited.
Well, those same attributes that I saw early on, I think it's going to be really a grand opportunity for you with the Board of Selectmen. I'm looking forward to your service.
Thank you very much.
So Nancy, I and others have called this a bit of a Dickensian time for us here in Falmouth. At the same time, the best of times and the worst of times. And so, as you mentioned, you'll be really jumping right into that. And we are seeing the absolute best of our community during this pandemic, and people finding new ways and innovative ways to connect with each other and to give back and to be useful and to be helpful. You know, and the other side of it is true as well. And that push-pull about how much do you open, and you know, there are a few of us that do a weekly show here on FCTV to try to talk about some of those issues. But governing in the time of a pandemic is not something that just about anyone alive has on their resume until 2020. And so what of that? I mean, it's an extremely difficult time to come on board, and having known you for a long time, I know you're up to the task, but it is a daunting task.
I agree. And it's going to be a very, very difficult time. And I believe that in very difficult times, the best of people has a tendency to come forward. When, you know, we're in the middle of this crisis, and like you said, Troy, we're seeing some amazing things come out of people. So, and at the same time, there are a lot of very, very difficult decisions to be made, and there are variables to be weighed. There's safety, there's economy, and then you have this whole other group of issues that Falmouth still has to manage. But our number one priority from my perspective right now is to bring Falmouth out of this in a step-by-step, very safe manner. And that would be my priority. The other piece that I want to be very, very cognizant of is making sure that I listen and really hear what the people of Falmouth are telling the Board of Selectmen, and that's really important to me. And then as a board, we would need to make some of those difficult decisions. And they're not always going to be, as I learned, very popular. But I think if you take in all of the input and then you really dig deep and come up with a decision that you can live with, that's what we need to do. And again, you know, it's making sure that people are safe.
Well, one of my hopes is that you embrace the business community. They've gone through a real hard time right now. And of course, I think it's because you are such a good listener. I think inviting the business community in for a conversation to get you off to a great start would be a great idea.
I agree. I drove down Main Street today, and it was very sad. It was deserted, and you know, you see all the businesses shuttered up, and I thought, wow, you know, we need to pay attention to this. Those businesses are the backbone of our community, and how do we work with them really closely to make sure that they stay alive, and working with them to come up with that plan. I'm not sure what's happening with my computer here.
Well, it'll be nice to see you and Michael Kasparian, the president of the chamber, walking down Main Street together.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. Of course, at a safe social distance. Nancy,
Of course.
switch gears just a little bit. One of the things you were just talking about is the importance of listening to the voters. So there was a question on tonight's ballot as well for an override that had pretty resounding results. And so we talked a little bit about before with the town clerk about the typical timing of an override question. Legally, it doesn't have to, but generally it goes to town meeting and then to the ballot because of the timing and the moving of town meeting because of the pandemic. It happened the other way around. And so the voters have certainly spoken their will, but town meeting still has the ability to make a decision on their own. What do you make of that? And what are your thoughts on the results of the override question?
I think, given the numbers, again, town meeting will support the override for the firefighters. That's what it feels like. That is the feedback that we're getting clearly from the voting. And again, I would certainly listen. For me, again, when I go back to thinking about safety, safety comes first. And if the voters are saying that that's what they need, then I would support that.
All right. So, and as you said, decisions right off the bat that impact the people of Falmouth. But you have shown, as you were talking about that, the need and your willingness to make difficult decisions. I had a flashback to what was it? Was it the outdoor graduation, right? Wasn't that that was a decision that I think that you made that was difficult,
Yes.
but in the best interest of the community, and you stood strong, and that's not always easy. And that demonstrates courage and a real commitment. And so I'll offer that as commentary of my observation of our newest select board's member willingness to do the right thing. And that's all we can ask. So, I think, again, we'll offer really warm congratulations and gratitude
Absolutely.
that you're willing to step up in this difficult time and give back and perhaps forsake some of the more leisurely components of retirement for the very hard work of a member of the select board.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And any time that you'd like to come on our Falmouth Cares Business Roundtable to talk about your observations about the business community, we've had folks from hospitality, from restaurants, and next week we'll have some folks from the military and some doctors to share their experiences. And so as that continues, we welcome you on there to share your thoughts about how the pandemic is impacting all aspects of our community.
And I would gladly join you.
Great. Jay, anything?
Thank you for coming on. Say
Thank you
that
both
again.
so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Best of luck to you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So our newest member of the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board in Falmouth, that's Nancy Taylor, who really coasted to a pretty resounding victory tonight. Those numbers, again, the final numbers, Nancy Taylor with 4,117 votes. Sam Patterson winning another term on the board, as you can see in the graphic here, with 3,484 votes. And Michael Halen with 2,393 votes. Now, Jay, that and Ryan, if you would leave that graphic up there for just a minute, please, because as you can see, our crack staff here at FCTV not only has the total votes, but the votes by precinct. And it's notable, I think, to look at those blue lines on the bottom, and those represent precinct 1. And the other blue line a little further up, sort of the aquamarine-ish blue,
Right.
I guess. That represents precinct 5, 6, 7, 8, I think. Anyway, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the orange, excuse me. So 5 and 6 are West and North Falmouth. And so this, as we've seen in recent years, Jay, the results do have a geographic flavor to them. And the candidate that is able to perform strongly in precincts 1 and 5 and 6 tends to do well overall. And it looks as though in these results, most certainly that trend is continuing.
So Troy, I'm looking at the various colors, and if I'm colorblind, I just can't see it. The top portion of the light blue.
So I'm looking from the bottom up, Jane.
Right.
So the dark, almost navy blue at the bottom is
That's
precinct
precinct
1.
1.
And then the red above it, 2, and then so on, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so you can see there are pretty thick bands for precinct 1 for both Nancy and Sam. And then that orange band is precinct 5. And the lighter blue above it is precinct 6. And so, that's the trend that we've seen over the last several years. And again, we've talked about it several times. But when folks get out to vote, then they control the results. I mean, that's a basic tenet of local democracy. And so Nancy and Sam deserve a lot of credit for getting their vote out. But it looks as though so there's the total. Well, we'll see I don't know if we have any statistics on the total vote. Because you can vote for 2 candidates, it's tough to tell. But I'm going to guess that the turnout was over 25%. It looks like. So that's in the time of a pandemic, that's a pretty strong turnout for a local election.
Well, it's a darn good thing we don't have an electoral college in Falmouth.
Well, one thing we do have is a very strong commitment to democracy for sure, and we will have re-elected Selectman Sam Patterson on in just a few minutes. So let's continue to talk. As we were talking to Nancy, I did get some more results trickling in the Senate race, and so it does appear unofficially that Sue Moran has defeated Jay McMahon to become the next senator for the Plymouth and Barnstable district.
Then that means you received the Plymouth count.
Yeah, unofficial.
Uh-huh.
So, but it does look as though I'm just scrolling through my texts here. Pardon me.
As you do so, thinking of the margin, what are you seeing?
So what I have so far is looks like about 91. The unofficial results I have are 91-85. Moran 68-95, McMahon, and that's with all of the towns reporting unofficially. The town of Plymouth, we knew would be an important one in the race because of its population. Was very, very close. Unofficially, Moran 1735 over McMahon 1708. It was really, I think, Sue Moran's extremely strong showing in Falmouth that really carried the day. The rest of the communities were very competitive. Again, these are unofficial results, but McMahon 731 over 444 in Pembroke. McMahon by just 70 votes in his hometown of Bourne. As we further analyze this race in the days and weeks to come, that's an important number because it's very difficult to win a district-wide race if you can't pull a strong vote in your hometown. So Jay McMahon just squeaking out a victory by a few dozen votes in his hometown. Sue Moran taking the town of Sandwich, 1679 to 1422. And Jay McMahon taking the town of Kingston, 636 to 583. So McMahon was able to carry a few of the towns in the district.
Competitive, absolutely.
But not anywhere near the margin that Falmouth provided. Now it's interesting because Falmouth is the only community, excuse me, in this district that had a local election today. And so more people came out to vote because of the local election. And I'm sure that that helped boost Sue's numbers. That's something that's going to be interesting to look at. So So we'll, as she noted tonight, we'll be running for re-election to that seat right away in November. And whether it's Jay McMahon or another Republican candidate, that's going to be an important factor looking at these numbers. Now, of course, in November, that will be on the same day as the presidential election. So we would expect turnout to be pretty significant in the area. And Plymouth County, where Plymouth, Kingston, and Pembroke lie, was a county that has typically voted, at least in presidential elections, for Republicans. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. Certainly, Sue is the incumbent senator now, will and always does have an advantage as the incumbent. But we'll pay attention to this race in the days and weeks to come. And of course, I expect that in November we will be back here, Jay, on FCTV to provide you those results as well.
So Troy, as we wait for Sam to come on, any speculation on your part as to the messages that Moran and McMahon had? Where did they differ? Where did you see any significant difference?
So, that's a really good
Other
question.
than party affiliation.
And I will introduce Sam Patterson in just a minute. But I think at the end of the day, and I'll disclose, as I have before in the show, Sue has been a friend for a long time, and I did endorse her in my column during the primary. But I think it came down to experience. Sue Moran has been a selectman for a couple of terms, serves regionally in the Assembly of Delegates, was the chair of the Barnstable County Economic Development Council. And so she just brought a wealth of experience and really a proven track record of working in a nonpartisan way with both Democrats and Republicans. And Jay McMahon has some political experience for sure, has run for office, in fact, ran for Attorney General statewide, but just didn't have and doesn't have the government resume of the real true experience of working in government. And I would say that was probably a major factor for many voters when they went to the polls today. But
I couldn't help but notice that Sue received a number of really high-profile endorsements in this race, and I didn't see the same thing coming from McMahon's team.
Yeah, and I think again that's because of Sue's experience and her familiarity with folks on both sides of the aisle.
So we have two attorneys competing, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
yes, indeed. And ironically, that didn't become a distraction or a detraction for either. Right. So we do have Sam Patterson waiting here in our green room. So we'll gladly introduce him and bring him on board to talk about his successful election today. Sam, we welcome you to this live show here on FCTV. We offer you congratulations for another successful election to the Board of Selectmen. We're grateful for you for your willingness to continue to serve, and congratulations.
Artie, congratulations.
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry, I had trouble getting into Zoom. I had to start my hotspot here, so I have enough internet service to be able to use Zoom. So anyway, so I'm up for a third term. So this is 22 years, I guess, having completed 22 years in elected public office, and looking forward to another 3. We certainly have plenty of challenges in front of us as a town, but this is a terrific town and one that's worth investing time in. So I'm happy to continue to serve the town as best I can and look forward to representing the citizens. And I want to thank all the people that voted for me, and assure the people that didn't vote for me that I still take their interest at heart, and look forward to doing the best I can.
Well, thank you, Sam, and we are certainly very grateful for your willingness to serve 3 more years. Of course, as you noted, before you joined the Board of Selectmen 6 years ago, you had a long and successful time of service on the school committee. And so this is just a continuation of that. And we've been talking all night really about how incredible it is here in Falmouth that people are willing to give of themselves. Your new colleague on the board, on the select board, of course, was beginning to transition into retirement, but decided to continue to give back. And so you've got a lot of great experience on the select board now. And that's important because you're serving in a very difficult time. And, you know, as I said to Nancy, not really anybody alive ever had governing in a pandemic on their resume until now.
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge for all of us. Biggest challenge I've seen in my life. I'm grateful for the fact that I have a retirement income I can depend on. I feel very uncertain and worried about the many people who have lost their jobs and potentially will lose income here shortly and still have to pay rent or mortgage payments. We have some serious social problems that are going to be impacting this town and the people that live here for quite some time. Hopefully we'll get a vaccine in a year or so, but then all those people have got to get reemployed and productive again, and that's going to take a bit of a transition, I think. So it's going to be a lot of extra challenges, I think, in terms of the select board and what we can do to support people. But I do want to say that I think I mentioned it at the select board meeting on Monday that, we are very lucky in this town that there are so many organizations that reach out to help people who aren't as well off as, I'm fortunate to say that I am, and make sure that they have those basic needs met, and have shelter and have the social services they need for whatever issues, be they family issues or addiction potentially. So this is a great town, and I think really it's been a great town historically for probably 300 years. This town has a heritage of looking out for its neighbors, and I think it's continuing to do so in the many organizations that we have here in town, both government organizations, but then the non-governmental organizations like our Falmouth Service Center, and other organizations that we have that serve the people here. And I think there's a message that we need to get out too. People who haven't felt like they've been supported should be reaching out, and I would encourage them to contact our Susie Hoffman at the town's Human Services Department. She's the director of the Human Services Department, and seek help, because this town is ready to reach out and support people in these difficult times. And it's just a matter of reaching out, because we're willing to do it and we're eager to do it. We want to give everybody a fair shake in this world and give them opportunities to succeed and have a good quality of life.
Well, there certainly is an abundance of empathy in our community. I have to agree with you, Sam. Absolutely. Now, you have experience working with Miss Taylor.
Yes, I was on the school committee when she was the assistant superintendent and in charge of pupil personnel services. And of course, that means the guidance counselors, the special needs teachers as well. And so, I have to say, I'm really looking forward to serving with her, because she really was one of the key people in helping our school system get to a point where we have a level 1 student achievement at the junior high at Lawrence, as well as at the high school. And she, of course, took over as principal. She was, of course, the guidance counselor for many years at Lawrence, but she took over as principal and started the innovation school at Lawrence. And I think that was something that allowed the teachers to rally together and see a sort of a mission where all of them had to work together as a team. And I think that really upped, the teaching level, the commitment to the teaching and to the students. And that, in combination with the Ed Reform Act and setting up the curriculum standards so that we basically were teaching all the students at a particular grade level to the same standards. And I think that has helped tremendous. But anyway, Nancy was instrumental, I think, in pulling this back and getting them focused on student achievement. And we now have such an outstanding school system. And I give a lot of credit to Nancy for helping to pull that together. And certainly, it takes a big team, all those teachers. I don't want to say that she's getting all the credit, but she was certainly instrumental in the leadership way to help us, get teachers focused towards student achievement and getting up to the level that really is considered to be world class at this point. We are very fortunate in this town.
So you're talking about jumping right back into it, into the fray. What are some of the important things that you're going to be dealing with in the short term? Clearly, the pandemic.
Well, I think we're going to see a big drop in revenues. It's just, I don't see how that's not going to happen because there are going to be people that can't afford to pay their taxes, and that's going to hit us. And so I think we're going to have to be looking at, along with Finance Committee and town meeting, at just how we balance the town's budget. I think that's my sense. I hope I'm wrong, but I just have the feeling, looking at the rest of the nation and the kind of the forecasts on the economic recession that we're likely to be facing here, that we're going to feel it here in town as well. And so the state will probably not be able to provide us with as much of the state funding that we get, through Chapter 70 and through Chapter 90, those various funds that come into the town. We're already getting the sense that the Community Preservation Act, normally we would have been matched 18% for the 3% that we contribute from our real estate taxes. And that's going to drop to 11% at this point. So that's an indicator to me that, we're not going to quite get the funding that we've had in the past. So we're going to have to do some belt tightening, and that's not nice to go through, but it's one of those things where we're going to have to work together and figure out how to tighten our belt and make sure that we don't spend more than we take in revenues.
Well, I will say to you, Sam, in response to that, that because of the strong fiscal stewardship and the work that you and other members of the select board had done, I think you're right. And I work in the business, so I live with this every day. But that because of the good work that you and our finance director have done, we're strongly positioned to weather this storm. And because Falmouth relies less on state aid than other larger communities, we should be able to weather the storm without a significant impact on operations. And so that's a credit to the work that you have done and will continue to do.
Well, I agree with you. I think we are in a better position, but it doesn't mean we're not going to still have to, do some belt tightening in terms of how we spend our money and how much money there is available to us. I heard that the Proposition 2.5 override did go through. I think that's a valuable thing because we certainly have, seen a degradation in the amount of fire and rescue services that are available on any given moment in the town. The number of calls have gone up, and we really did need to expand the staff to provide the services that this town justly should have.
Indeed.
I think it speaks well of the community, knowing on many levels that there is going to be this financial struggle in the community, both for the residents as well as the town, and they still overwhelmingly saw the need for the service.
Well, we're speaking for myself. I mean, I'm considerably older than I was when we washed ashore here at Cape Cod, and elderly people generally require more healthcare services, and I think that's the reason why the number of calls have gone up. Is that our demographic here is older, and so hopefully those of us that are older recognize that we wanted that particular type of care. If emergencies come up, we wanted to make sure there was somebody there to make sure we get to the hospital or whatever care is required to keep us going and keep us healthy and thriving. So that's probably part of it. And then I think, you know, the increase on our tax bill of $30-some on the average house is, you know, not that big a burden that people couldn't say, yeah, I can afford that. And I'm basically paying for an insurance premium to make sure that if I need that service, it'll be available for me.
Well, and certainly overwhelmingly, the citizens of the town of Falmouth agree with you. So Sam, we are very, very grateful for you to join us, you know, in this virtual way. Normally you'd probably be at some local establishment enjoying your hard-earned victory with your supporters. In this age of the pandemic, we have to do this in this still close together but physically distant sort of way. But we're very grateful for you spending a few minutes with us to talk about your victory for a third term here on the select board. And again, we offer you congratulations and much gratitude for your hard work on behalf of the town.
Well, thank you. But and maybe I would say that I want to thank the public who might be listening, you know, for practicing that social distancing, because we have our infection rates down. And aside from those higher rates in long-term care facilities, people have been practicing the right kind of measures to keep that infection from spreading. And until we finally get large-scale immunity through vaccination, we're probably going to have to continue to do that at some level. And I hope that the governor continues to give the state good advice and that we can follow that advice and open up our industries a little bit more. It sounds like that's going to happen, but he's doing it in a measured way so that not too many people lose their lives, and we're able to manage the infection rate. So I'm tickled to death with the way our town has cooperated. And I'm a little worried about the number of people coming in from outside the town to enjoy their property, come here for a month-long stay or whatever it is, because of course, when you have people moving around, you're going to see increased new infections, and that's going to be our challenge through the summer. And you know, hopefully it'll be at a lower level. Unfortunately, it's going to hurt our businesses, but it's something we're going to be dealing with, because we've seen it other places, and you know, it's fine for us to control our own urge to get out there and socialize and be face to face. But it's another thing when people come here and want a vacation, and yes, and they're supposed to self-quarantine for 14 days, but I think we all know that not everybody is going to do that. And that'll be a risk for all of us. But if we keep doing the things that we're doing, we're probably going to minimize that risk. And I think that's a message that I feel, and that's what I intend to do.
Well, you know, Sam, there's an old expression that says people will treat you the way you allow them to. So let's not allow them to do so.
Well, I think you and I both know that we only have so much control over other people's behavior.
True.
For sure. Well, again,
Congratulations.
we will continue to talk about that important need for continued vigilance and physical distancing, as my friend Will Mebane calls it, which is a nice way to phrase it, right? Because we can be physically distant but still be social, and that's why we're here on FCTV Tonight Live, chatting with you about another electoral victory in your long career locally here of serving this great community. So again, Sam, thank you for joining us. We look forward to continuing to chat with you anytime you'd like about important issues here in Falmouth. So thanks again and congratulations.
Thank you.
So another successful election here in Falmouth, Jay, and let's just run through cumulatively those local results because Ryan and our great folks here at FCTV are showing us the results, and so these look to be the cumulative results district-wide, as you can see down there. Those are the unofficial but cumulative results for the senator in the general court for the Plymouth and Barnstable Senate seat, and Sue Moran winning by some 2,000 votes. So you can see that margin of victory here in Falmouth indeed was the difference in this race.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it was very, very close.
Well, congratulations to Sue Moran.
Yes, indeed. And so she will be at work right off the bat. And we've, because our good friend and previous Senator Vinnie DiMacedo is hard at work at Bridgewater State University, that seat is open. And so during this time when the Senate is dealing with important issues of providing local aid to cities and towns, she comes on board at a really, really critical time. And that experience that we talked about earlier that Sue brings to this seat will be critical, as she will go right to fighting for the towns in this district. So that's really important. So again, a pretty wide margin of victory, but definitely Falmouth carried the day. And on to the Board of Selectmen. We were very grateful to have the two victorious candidates for the Select Board, Nancy Taylor and Sam Patterson, here on the show tonight. And they scored a pretty comfortable victory. Nancy Taylor, as you can see, with 4,117 votes, and Sam Patterson elected to his third term on the board with 3,484, and challenger Mike Halen with 2,393. So pretty comfortable victory for first-time candidate and first-time big winner, Nancy Taylor.
And I'm quite certain that our great newspaper here in town, the Falmouth Enterprise, will have all of the other election results in their blast no later than tomorrow.
Yes, indeed, they will. And that's important to note that all of the results, including the town meeting races, will be scrolled continuously on FCTV in the coming days, starting with some results this evening. And so look to FCTV or the website fctv.org for continued results on these races. And this is the unofficial results for question one. Of course, there were 12 questions on the ballot, most of them dealing with pretty minor housekeeping changes to our charter, which is our local blueprint for government. But the one of greatest consequence was question one, which of course dealt with an override of a little over $900,000 to add 8 firefighters beginning next July 1. And so that, again, a very comfortable victory of 3592 to 2172. And so, again, thank you so much to Ryan and all of the staff at FCTV that helped put this broadcast together. Deb Rogers, the CEO, and Bob Fenstermaker, and Jeff. I mean, just the whole crew works tirelessly and puts many hours in before the camera starts recording. And Jay, those are the folks that really deserve the credit for bringing all of this information live.
Absolutely. This has been a learning experience for all of us. This is the beginning. For me personally, Zoom is a new tool. And just a shout out to the staff, and to remind every resident of the town of Falmouth, this is your Falmouth Community Television, and become a member or just drop in, and you too can, don't drop in right now, but you too can learn how to use Zoom and all of the other communication tools that FCTV has at their disposal.
So I guess that's a great way in offering gratitude to the staff and volunteers at FCTV to wrap this up. Jay, as always, it's a pleasure, my friend, to cover these elections with you. And it's always great to see you. I wish we were in person so that I could shake your hand and give you a hug, but I'm glad you're doing well and staying safe during this pandemic. And as always, it's great. Those of you watching, thank you for caring enough about your local elections to watch these results, and for the thousands of people who went out to vote today and early voting, thank you for being such an important part of making democracy work here in Falmouth. We're very grateful. So congratulations to all the candidates. Particular congratulations to Senator Sue Moran, and to newest members of the Select Board, Nancy Taylor and Sam Patterson, And we appreciate all of you for watching, for getting out to vote, and trying to build a better Falmouth. For my pal and sidekick, Jay Zavala, I'm Troy Clarkson. We appreciate you watching. Be safe, and we'll see you soon.
Watch FCTV. Good night.
We are off the air. I am coming back.
You guys did a
I'm
great
like, do you
job.
see this? Oh
Thank
my
you
God,
so
you
much.
have no idea what it was like behind the scenes.
No, but that's going to be part of Andrew's
Oh my
curriculum,
God,
right?
my heart.
Deb, is that going to be part of Andrew's curriculum?
Oh my God, I don't know. You guys were absolutely unbelievable.
Great
You were
job,
s-
Ryan. Great
you
job.
guys
Thank you.
were
You're welcome. Thank you. Great
amazing.
job,
You-
everybody.
Great
We're
team
like-
effort. It
We
really
were
was,
like,
yes.
you know, we've got Bob texting, Sue's having mic problems, she's texting me. Bob, you want to come back? Let's see. So I'm just going to end the recording. Give me a second. No, don't end the meeting. Hold on, cancel that. I didn't mean to do that. I was just going to